Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us at this presentation. This will be an introduction for a lot of you to the collaborative work of Providence Farm Collective, the Western New York Land Conservancy, really the entire community, a big friends group, and the farmers at Providence Farm Collective. With you and everyone else, we are supporting the efforts of the farmers at this really amazing place, the Providence Farm Collective. They're trying to make their farm the permanent home of their farm, and we're trying to help. I'm J. Jean Rose Burney, the Deputy Director at the Western New York Land Conservancy. So you can see on this Zoom that I'm joined by Kristen Heltman-Weiss. She's the President and Executive Director of Providence Farm Collective. I'm also joined by Hamadi Ali, who is the Markets Manager at Providence Farm Collective. I don't think you can see her, but Kara Frasina is on this call as well. She's managing the Zoom and making sure all the technical things work. So thank you, Kara. Providence Farm Collective is a not-for-profit organization. It leases a 37-acre farm in Orchard Park. And right now, nearly 300 refugee and immigrant and Black farmers grow healthy and culturally relevant food for their children and for their communities. And we are teaming up to raise $2.3 million by the end of this year. This will allow Providence Farm Collective to buy the land that they currently lease, add needed infrastructure. It'll let the Land Conservancy be able to permanently protect the farm with a conservation easement so that it can always be a farm. And this will make it so the farmers can always have a land to call home. But we need you to help. We need you to make this possible. So thank you for joining us tonight. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Next slide, Kara. Is the slideshow working, Kara? There we go.
Sorry, just took me a second to get it up there.
That's okay. There's a big black box over there. There we go. Yeah, go to the second slide. Okay, so sorry about that, but just technical difficulties. I think we got it figured out. So I wanted to give a little overview of the Land Conservancy first. We are a not-for-profit land trust. We work throughout Western New York. We're helping communities and people protect their most important forests, meadows, rivers, wetlands. Our members create new nature preserves where people can walk on trails or put a kayak in the water. Our members, you all, have protected places like the Stella Niagara Preserve on the Niagara River in Lewiston, and the Gallagher Nature Sanctuary in Grand Island, or the Owens Falls Sanctuary in East Aurora. A lot of other places I think a lot of you probably visited and helped create. You can see in this photo, this is the College Lodge Forest. This is a really incredible old growth forest in Chautauqua County. Just last week, we purchased the forest after many years and a lot of people's hard work. We now own the College Lodge Forest, so that's just a little bit of a celebration early in this presentation. It's now protected. You can already go there and visit if you'd like. Next slide, Kara. So right now in the city of Buffalo, we're creating the River Line. This is a new nature trail and greenway that connects Canal Side to the Buffalo River across from Tesla. The River Line, it'll connect neighborhoods together, Perry and Old First Ward in the Valley neighborhood. It'll connect people together. It'll connect people to the waterfront. It'll connect people to nature, and it'll do all that right in the middle of the city. And it's just an example of the type of work that the Land Conservancy does. Next slide, Kara. So obviously, we also protect farmland. A lot of times our big farmland protection projects don't make a lot of headline news or big stories on TV. But it's actually a lot of the work that we do. We protect farms like the Providence Farm Collective. We've protected thousands of acres of farms. These are places that are working farms, places that farmers grow healthy, fresh food for our region. There's places in Amherst and Marilla and Clarence and Eden and more communities throughout Western New York. And so with farms like Providence Farm Collective, especially that farm, we want to ensure that everyone in our region is part of shaping our future. That everyone is involved in conservation. Next slide, Kara. So now let's just talk about the Providence Farm Collective. And before I turn it over to Kristen, and then Kristen will talk with Hamadi, I'd like to show a short video about Providence Farm Collective that was just created. Kara, can you run the video?
Providence Farm is located on Burton Road in Orchard Park. They've got several different nationalities farming collectively in their own controlled space, but they're given the resources, tools, seeds, fertilizers, instruction.
The benefit here is we got a free land making farm, growing our own food that we will not be able to go and buy. We grow grains, pepper, and mostly we love to grow our own African food that we love to eat. We grow our own food here.
So apart from that, they are trying to bring us all together as refugees who are resettling this country, try to provide us with other opportunities that we might not know that are available for us.
It's really a space where you can kind of figure out what you're doing as you become an expert in what you want to grow.
And with that little introductory video, I think I'd like to turn it over to Kristen to talk more about the farm.
Thank you, Jay Jean. And thank you all for joining us to learn more about Providence Farm Collective and the Western New York Land Conservancy and how together we're partnering to raise funds to conserve these 37 acres of prime farmland and increase access to fresh, affordable produce in our region. Providence Farm Collective's mission is cultivating farmer-led and community-rooted and farm systems to actualize the rights of under-resourced people. Our farmers, our board members, our staff, we're all committed to empowering just and equitable access to food and farmland through our farm programs. These include programs where communities grow their own food, where individuals can learn to farm as a business, and where youth can earn summer income by working alongside their families, community members on the farm. Before Providence Farm Collective, though, there was the Somali Bantu Community Farm, and these are some of my young friends from that farm. In 2017, a diverse cross-section of Western New Yorkers banded together with the Somali Bantu community, and we formed a farm on the horse farm of Chris and Lynn Kerr. We grew actually our very first vegetables in a horse paddock that was generously offered to us by them in East Aurora. The Kerr's generosity of sharing this pasture land with the Somali Bantu was a miracle itself, because at the time, the community elders in the Somali Bantu had been trying to find accessible and affordable farmland for at least 10 years at this point. And that struggle to find farmland, and especially affordable farmland in our region to even lease, is not a unique one. It's experienced by all new farmers, young farmers, beginning farmers. In fact, the greatest barriers to starting a farm are access to affordable farmland and capital. In 2017, the Somali Bantu Community Farm was founded, and shortly afterward, other community leaders across Buffalo began to ask, they would ask me, they would ask Mahmoud, how could they also access farmland to grow fresh foods, key to their cultural traditions? And even more importantly, I started to learn about the health implications of people not being able to access these traditional foods. Many, but not all, of the farmers at Providence Farm Collective are refugees. And over the past 5 to 20 years, these folks have been settled by the United Nations on Buffalo's west side. Most of our farmers, our Western New York farmers at Providence, come to the US having farmed in their homelands, but they have little access to good soils for growing their own food. So a lot of people think, you know, there's urban farming, they can just grow stuff in their yards. But most of the soil in the city is in fact contaminated because of the industry that has been in Buffalo for 100 years now. And as a result, it makes growing food in your yard a difficult thing, because you actually need to build raised beds and invest in clean soil. And that is unaffordable for most of our farmers. But probably most impactful is when you see 5 acres of Tanzania corn grown out in, you know, pasture land in Orchard Park, you realize that they could not have grown that corn in their yard very easily. So that's what the farm became very much about. It was a place where we honor people's needs to grow their food that's traditional to their celebrations, traditional to their day-to-day diet. And just agriculture is something that they all come with the skill of doing. Another challenge that I learned that my friends in the Somali Bantu community were experiencing was that there were very few stores in their neighborhoods that sold fresh produce, let alone produce that celebrated or was a part of their culinary heritage. So with so many other people interested in accessing farmland, the Somali Bantu Community Farm and the founders, made this decision. It became a pilot project, and the pilot project sought to address the inequities in farmland and fresh food access. But more importantly, it was our goal to assess the ability and the willingness of people to drive 30 minutes from where they live just to be able to grow their own food. And it was kind of one of those things where one of the first questions I almost always get asked is, how do people get to the farm? And I personally was disbelieving that so many people would make that trip so many days a week in between working hours at their regular jobs to grow food. But in fact, it was a great success. So in 2019, Beth, our farm director, Mahmoud, and I set out to meet other folks and go and talk to different communities to invite them to come farm at Providence Farm Collective. In 2019, Providence Farm Collective was formed, and in 2020, we had 6 incubator farmers, Allison Dehoney of Buffalo Go Green, and the Liberian, Congolese, Burundian, Chin, and Karenni communities, all joining the Somali Bantu farming in East Aurora. That year, 23,000 pounds of fresh produce was grown by the farmers of Providence Farm Collective, and all of that food went to regional food insecurity. The Somali Bantu farmers and the Somali Bantu farm, they had the idea, they did the work, but none of this would have ever happened if it weren't for the generosity of the Kerr family. But what we found that year in 2020 was that growing vegetables in pasture is not exactly, it doesn't yield high harvests. And when our farmers are working 50 plus hours at other jobs and investing their own time and money in driving out to the farm to grow their food, we really felt a commitment to be able to make sure that they had prime agricultural soil in order to grow and harvest the most food that they could. What we wanted to really ensure was that they had the agency also that comes with not being a guest on someone else's land. So as much as we were grateful to the Kerr family for all that they did for us, for the farmers, we decided we were going to look for prime farmland and figure out a way of moving. And we were really, really lucky. So what happened at the same time was that we were doing tours in East Aurora, and Nancy Smith of the Land Conservancy came on one of those tours, and we started a conversation about prime farmland and securing that farmland and how we could possibly work together. And so through several series of opportunities, including meeting Nancy that day and having that conversation with her, Providence Farm Collective moved in April of last year, so just a year ago, to prime agricultural land in Orchard Park. And you can see in this photo a layout of our farms from last summer. And if you came and visited the farm, you would walk through and you would have a sense that this has been here forever, and folks had been growing here forever, because it really felt so much like home to us. And it was actually producing the yields of vegetables that made our farmers really happy. We actually were able to do this because a very generous board member purchased this farmland. This is called the Winter Farm, and it was owned for the past 70 years by Dave Winter and his family. Dave grew up on that farm. His kids grew up on that farm. And one thing that was really, really important to him was that it stay a farm. So the board member of Providence Farm Collective purchased this land, and we signed an agreement where Providence Farm Collective pays $1 a year to farm here until this December, the completion of this capital campaign, when we will have an opportunity to buy this land and have full ownership of it, in partnership with the Land Conservancy as they seek to conserve this land. So while Providence Farm Collective was also looking for this land, I talk about how I met Nancy Smith. I also was giving a tour to Diane Held from Cornell Cooperative Extension. And I learned that Cornell was also looking to move, and they were looking for farmland. Cornell has been a key partner with Providence Farm Collective from the very beginning. Our first year, Megan Burley, one of the educators at Cornell Cooperative, came out pretty often to teach us how to do things like soil test and water test. And that was just the beginning. I sat in a meeting this morning where we're in a farm to school grant program with Cornell Cooperative Extension and Buffalo Public Schools. And those are just a couple of the many, many programs that we have with them. So the idea of co-locating them and finding this farmland that's within a 25-minute drive of Buffalo was absolutely a miracle in my mind. When we first met with Dave and looked at his farm, we determined that this land, this beautiful soil, it's well drained. It met every need of Providence Farm Collective, and it met every need of Cornell. And we decided that, this was going to be the place. This was going to be our new home. When you drive past Burton Road on Powers and you look down the road, you see where this could have easily become another cul-de-sac. This neighborhood of the farm is actually surrounded by cul-de-sacs. And Dave was committed, thank God, to finding a buyer who wanted to keep it in agriculture. And so the capital campaign's goal is a conservation easement for Providence Farm Collective's 37 acres. We want to guarantee, the Land Conservancy wants to guarantee that these soils, these prime soils, are never built or paved over. So the impact of this move has been pretty amazing. I think one thing that really blows me away, like when I look at this picture, is just exactly how many people were farming, regularly at Providence. We had 275 farmers. They represented 16 different farms. They harvested last year over 90,000 pounds of produce. So we went from 2020 producing 23,000 pounds of produce to over 90,000 pounds last year. That produce fed over 6,000 Western New Yorkers. We also started last year a farm-to-table lunch program that provided healthy meals to farmers and our 84 youth employees. We launched an 18-member CSA and started a Monday market stand. 22 workshops on crop production, livestock husbandry, and small and financial business management were provided in cooperation with Cornell Cooperative Extension and Westminster Economic Development Initiative. This year, Providence will grow to host 23 farms that operate under its umbrella. In this photo, that's Beth Liepler, our farm director, and she's actually teaching some of the kids how to harvest. As I mentioned, we had 84 youth employees last year. That's about 11% of the entire youth employment program in Erie County. 11% of those kids were farming at Providence, which is pretty impressive. In partnership with Erie County's Department of Social Services and the Mayor's Summer Youth Internship Program, these kids earned over $160,000. And I think what was most impactful for me to experience is that the kids were learning on their community plots from their community leaders, from farmers and their parents. They were learning their harvest traditions. They were learning about the foods that they eat every day, but they had never seen how they were grown. And I think of Hamadi's kids who experienced for the first time, his son experienced Kulumbula, which is the Somali Bantu Maize Harvest Festival. In addition to these, sharing cultural experiences, the kids also participated in workshops with Stitch Buffalo and Second Generation Theater. And they also did things like college visits. So in addition to like farming the food, we're also building community at Providence. So this is our very humble barn. And I drove over there a couple of weeks ago, and the front of the barn, actually the sheathing has come off this winter. So, what you look at now when you drive by are basically the studs in the interior wall. The barn, it's old. It was built in the early 1800s and actually has American chestnut beams. It's beautiful, in its framework, but it really needs to be updated and we need to button it up. When I think about the incredible work that comes out of that barn, so we do not have bathroom facilities. We use porta-johns. We have a wash and pack station, but it could be a better wash and pack station. It's the same with, a cooler. We also need a kitchen. We have a kitchen that was made basically in a cold storage area in this barn. And out of that kitchen, Sharif Abdi, who is the cook at Providence Farm Collective, makes farm to table lunches for the farmers and the youth. And it's amazing to me that he's able to put out about 1,000 meals a week from that very, very meager kitchen. This is all to say that we're in need of infrastructure improvements, and that's a huge part of this capital campaign, is fixing up that barn. Another piece of it is where you see that tent over on the right. That's our place of gathering. That's our shade spot, a place where we can work with the youth on workshops or with farmers, a place where we can gather and eat. But not only is it not large enough for us all, it also is really susceptible to the wind that is pretty powerful on Burton Road there. So consequently, the tent is always in some state of disarray. And, we hope one day to be able to build a pavilion there that will provide us with those bathrooms that are so needed, provide us with a commercial kitchen, provide us with a shaded area where we can sit and gather and eat, and provide us with a market stand that we could have open nearly year round. This photo is of our harvest celebration last year. And I think one of the really interesting things to me is when we moved to Burton Road and we started to eat lunch together, and we started to have this sense that this is ours, this is our home. That sense of belonging really contributed to fostering and building connections between all of these diverse communities from, Buffalo, but also across Western New York. So Providence Farm Collective is a place where these relationships are fostered, where connections are made. It's a place that, this picture shows food is grown and traditions are shared. We had 9 tables at this celebration filled with foods that people brought that, they harvested their vegetables the day before. They went home and they made these fabulous dishes. And we kept having to find tables to put the food on because people were bringing so much of it. What I love most about what's happened this past year, the transformation of the farm and how it feels, I think it can be summed up actually in the Burundian farm name. And that name is Aku Aku. And when you translate that, it means our farm, our way. And that's fully the spirit of empowerment that is so palpable when you visit Providence Farm Collective. It's so, it's just so powerfully felt by our farmers and anybody who comes and spends, an hour with us, a day with us, sits down with us for a meal. So on the right there is my friend Bayomba Joseph, and these are her children. Little Sarah was just a couple months old when her mom was out there planting her farm. And the kids are out there with her. Oh my gosh, I would say like 4 or 5 days a week. That entire family is out there working the land. And I have never met just such a happy family to be there together, doing this work together, running around outside, playing. Bayomba travels to the farm at her own expense. She packs up the kids for the day and goes out there. And she does this because providing her family, her kids, with these healthy foods is so important to her. Another thing that became really important to people this year was that we were able to, through the Buffalo Bills Foundation, purchase vegetables from our farmers at parity pricing. And so a farmer like Bayomba was able to sell vegetables to us that we in turn donated to food pantries in our community's neighborhoods. And these sales supplemented her household income. So this little guy here is my friend Ibrahim, and he is just as wonderful as he is adorable in this picture. And so when I think of the future of farming, and I also think of the Buffalo Renaissance that is so much in the news these days, I think of the resurgence of Western New York as a region, a place of opportunity. I think of the growth of our population largely because of new Americans settling here. And I think of Providence Farm Collective because it's a place where we're mindful of all of these things and want them to all come together. And so I see the farm, I see it as a model for resiliency and sustainability. And I see it mostly as a model for equity in our food and agriculture systems. It's a way where we kind of, we take the existing system and then we ask everybody to just think of it a little bit differently. And instead of thinking about our, new Americans settling and becoming farm laborers working for somebody else, it's acknowledging and honoring that they come with the knowledge, with rich agricultural knowledge and traditions, that they could in fact be farm owners themselves and be starting their own farm businesses. And that is something that we strive to do. I think when we think about this capital campaign, for me, I get asked a lot, why is this important to somebody other than one of your farmers? And why it's important is, first I think, well, we often take the food that's on our tables for granted. And we certainly take the people who produce it for granted. But when you think about this joint capital campaign and how it prioritizes the conservation of farmland, which in fact prioritizes making sure that we all have a strong, resilient, local food system, it supports a new way of thinking about equity too, though, and about thinking about the connections between our land and our fellow Western New Yorkers and our food. And above all, it provides for us and prioritizes uplifting all of us within this system. And that's why, to me, it's just so wonderful to be able to partner with an organization like the Land Conservancy, to be able to co-locate with Cornell Cooperative Extension, to really actualize this vision that we have, the farmers at Providence Farm Collective, for a future where they're sitting at the table with everybody else, having, the promise of opportunity and being active and engaged citizens within Western New York. Where I've been so fortunate along this journey is meeting just really incredible people. And one of those people is with me tonight. He's one of my partners in this work, Mr. Hamadi Ali. He's Providence Farm Collective's market manager. And so, hey, Hamadi, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, hi, Kristen. Thank you.
I'm really excited because this is a chance for people to learn a little bit more about your role and how all of this started. And I think back to when you and I very first met. It was at the Kurz, actually. And it was, I think you were there with Halima and you had the 3 kids with you. And it was when the Somali Bantu Farm first started. You were president of the community organization at the time. And that first summer on the farm, we were just getting to know each other. But I remember one thing that I was like so impressed about was your commitment, like to being there. And then the joy that you found in the challenge of working that soil. I was like, wow, who is this guy? And then you told me, then this blew me away, that you have a master's in economics. And I was like, okay, there's more here. There's more here, that this young, ambitious man is bringing his family out to this farm to really work the land. And, I know I've learned over the years why that was, but, I guess share with us, why was that so important to you, that, that first year at the farm?
The first year at the farm, I remember first our elders, the Somali Bantu elders, looking for farmland for several years. I believe over 10 years. And we couldn't find a plot in Buffalo. And then fortunately, we met you and we found the farm in East Aurora, and our elders were just thrilled. They were beyond happy. They wanted to come there. And when they got out there, the land is not what they were used to, but they needed encouragement. They needed someone to be there and show that this is what we have and this is what we are going to work with. And you, myself, and more, and the rest of the team, we kind of did that, and to this day.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember every year was a little bit of a struggle, but we actually got some momentum going.
Right.
And I also realized, like, farming, excuse me, is very important just to your family. Mm-hmm. What is your first memory?
Well, my first memory of farming goes back to my home country, Somalia. In the Somali Bantu tradition, you get married and you get a plot or a parcel of land adjacent to your parents' farm. And that's what happened to my father. So, and all his siblings, they were all they surrounded their parents' farm. And I remember at the age of 8 or 9, waking up early in the morning, going to the farm, toiling in the land for good 10, 12 hours, coming back home. And after the Civil War broke out, my family relocated to Kenya, in the coastal region of Kenya. And there, as refugees, food was not sufficient. There was rations from the United Nations. And I remember my father and several other Somali Bantu people went to the locals looking for farmland. And the locals were very generous. They offered their farms to the Somali Bantu, and my family and other families started farming. And we became very self-reliant. We had food abundance. But this didn't take long. The refugee camp was closed, and we had to move to northeastern Kenya, where it is semi-arid or a desert. And when we got there, the same situation, food was scarce, and we really, really struggled. And so that's when I realized agriculture was the way. And my respect and respect for appreciation for farming and agriculture, that's when it really took hold.
Well, what I love is, now you're working at Providence Farm Collective as the markets manager. And I see, you have such a great ability to communicate with the farmers and offer them encouragement, just not in the many languages that you speak, but, just like understanding where they come from, and you offer them not only like compassion and understanding and the explanations they need, but then you tell them all of the opportunities that are available to them. You help them find markets for the food that they're growing. And I just feel like that's another one of those fortuitous things that happened along this journey with us, is we've always had like the right people show up. And I was so happy when, I called you last year and I'm like, hey, we got this job. What are you thinking? And that first day when you started was just like amazing to me, mm-hmm. And I think about that all the time, because I think about just like 5 years ago, we're trying to start the Somali Bantu community farm. Your mom's out there, your kids are out there, your wife is out there. We're all, working, and I see the kids and they're having so much fun. And it was obvious to me through that they're like learning things, and not just learning things about, farming or the plants or anything like that. But it seemed to me like you and Mo and Sharif and the other farmers were instilling in your kids some pretty valuable lessons. And tell me a little bit about that.
You remember my oldest, Daudi, this past summer worked at the farm in the summer youth program. And so when the program was over, we got home and I asked him, what did you learn? And he sat down and thought, and he's like, Dad, I remember who, and I was like, Kulimbula? He said, yes. And that made me very happy, actually. I was like, oh, he learned something about our culture. And funny enough, in this past January, when I traveled to Tanzania, mm-hmm. I stopped at a corn stand where they sell, what do you call it? Not barbecued, but not grilled. Almost like roasted corn. Yes. Yeah. And me and my uncle bought corn. And I jokingly said to my uncle, I wonder who limbula this corn. And my uncle just looked me in the face strangely, like what are you talking about? I'm like, Kulimbula. I said, you remember Kulimbula? And I told him, yes. He said, oh, people out here don't care about Kulimbula. No one really celebrates Kulimbula. I was like, well, we just celebrated Kulimbula this past year in America. It's like, in America, like he was surprised. Like, yes, we do celebrate Kulimbula in America. So that connects to, you see, people in the diaspora try to preserve their cultures while people back home try to forget the cultures. So this is what TFC does to our children, teaching them their traditions or preserving their traditions.
It's so interesting you say that, because one thing I notice when working with the kids is, and especially like in a tutoring situation or even at the farm, I noticed that like that strengthening of learning, of connecting to their family, it's really fostered by learning those traditions. And I see so much how, a strong family and strong community connection, it gives the kids what they need to kind of get through the challenges of being a child and a teen and get to adulthood. And I think it's actually just so honorable how you guys are so committed to doing that and just making sure your kids have that. I think of your kids, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but were all four of them born in the U.S. or was Dowdy born in Africa?
No, all four were born in the U.S. And Dowdy and Hassani were born in Nashville, Tennessee. And mm-hmm. Hawa and Omari were born here in Buffalo.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I never asked. I mean, I know Hawa and Omari were, but yeah. So when did you and Halima come to the U.S.?
We came in 2004. Well, we came separately. Mm-hmm. I came to the U.S. in August 2004, and Halima came to the U.S. September 2004. So we were
Oh,
a month
wow.
apart. Yes.
And how about your mom and dad? When did they end up coming?
Me and my parents came around the same time. At the same time,
Okay.
actually, not around.
Yeah, I always wondered that and never really asked. So that's so interesting. And you mentioned Tennessee. So how'd you end up in Buffalo?
Well, my family came from Kenya to Buffalo, and Halima was resettled in San Diego, California, with her uncle. Yes, but her dad came a long time ago in the 90s, and he lived in Tennessee. So Halima had to move from San Diego to Tennessee, and I had to leave here to go meet Halima in Tennessee. So that's how I ended up in Tennessee.
Oh my gosh. I never knew any of the bands who were in San Diego. Like I knew Idaho, I know Maine, I know down in North Carolina, Nashville, but wow, you just taught me something new today. So that's really interesting. And that is another interesting part is I don't know if many people know this. There are actually Somali Bantu farms across the United States. A lot of the bigger communities actually start these farms and they do them all in different ways, but with the same intention. The idea is we came here as farmers and we want to earn a living as farmers. So Hamadi, this is another crazy thing. Last year, you started at Providence Farm Collective, and you and I always have those really fun. We don't really have water cooler talks at Providence Farm Collective. We have more wash and pack station conversations. So we're having one of our philosophical conversations, and I couldn't help but think, oh my God, did you ever think when we started Somali Bantu Community Farm, we'd be here, 5 years later? And I don't know, what's your reaction to that?
Well, with the struggles, I really didn't think we'll be here. It was pretty tough in the beginning. It was very, very tough. And, but to now, I can't believe it. It was hard. I thought it was gonna be almost like something that came off a whim, and it's gonna end just like a whim, nothing else. But I am very, very happy that it went the way it went.
And I have big dreams for this place. What are your dreams? How do you see Providence Farm Collective in the future?
Well, as I indicated earlier, it took us several years, the Somali Bantu community, to get the farm. But PFC has eased the entry point for immigrants to get land access. And so the future of PFC is bright. And I'm not saying this as a cliche. We got the farmers market coming up. You got all the incubator farmers learning all these skills, how to farm, modern farming techniques, learning business skills. And on top of that, I see them becoming on their own after they leave the 3-year program that they have, becoming owning their own farms and conducting their own businesses. And on top of that, transferring their skills and ideas that they learn here, maybe to their home countries, and becoming almost like an agent of change, taking the ideas and taking them back to their countries. And this is as a result of PFC.
Yeah, I see the same thing. And it's interesting, in that walk and pack station over lunch, we have so many conversations. And I hear the Congolese leaders saying the same thing, PFC has to be taken back to Africa, or PFC would work, this other place too. And it's really interesting to hear how impactful it's been for people and for our farmers. Mari, I hope you know how grateful I am for our friendship and to call you friend. It's been an incredible journey, and I am so excited. In another month, we're going to be back out there on the farm together every day. And I appreciate you sharing your story tonight.
Thank you, Kristen. We appreciate the Somali Bantu and all the communities.
Oh, thank you, Hamadi. So I want to share with you one last video. And I think it's really important if you are interested in learning more, that you reach out to me, that you reach out to Jean, Nancy, Kara, Mo, Hamadi. Reach out to us, come visit the farm. It's incredible to see. We've included these videos just to kind of give you that visual. The pictures, of course, help. But as I mentioned before, there's a palpable feeling of empowerment at the farm. And this next video highlights our farmers, our Providence Farm Collective farmers, and they share with you the importance of the farm and the importance of this capital campaign, why it matters to them, but also why it matters to you. And I thank you so much for your time tonight.
Across our region, farmers are aging out of agriculture. Their retirement plans increasingly involve the sale of their land to developers. In Erie County alone, we've lost about 40% of our prime agricultural soil to development since 1950. Once you develop prime soil, it's lost forever. When we continue to push our food system further away, we limit the ability of local food production to sustain our region through a natural disaster or a pandemic. Together, the Western New York Land Conservancy and Providence Farm Collective are enacting a grassroots solution to this growing and serious problem. Our capital campaign will fund the outright purchase of the 37 acres of prime farmland we began growing on in 2021, and ensure it will remain farmland forever.
PFC did a very great job to even providing the land for us. And not just the land, they provided resources, the effort, the manpower to get us over here.
This is some of the nicest land here in New York State. It's very well drained, it's very early ground, and it can be real forgiving in a wet fall. Not all of it, but most of it.
So many of the immigrants and refugees arriving in Buffalo come here with rich agricultural tradition, knowledge, and skills. By supporting our capital campaign, you will secure the future of these small businesses, investing in and feeding our community.
Right now we have 5 acres, which you see it here with the corn, and people, they just plant it with their hand. It's not a machine. 5 acres. They go through with the hand. It's just like making an exercise. People, they just remember where they're coming from, what they used to do it. Many of people just remembers back home, and then it's a tradition, it's a way of living, and then we try to embrace it.
It's a different pepper we eat. It's a small and very spicy one. So we like to eat the spicy food, so that's the reason we can grow a lot right here.
The importance of farming here is it makes me to feel like home. I feel like home. That's the important part. It makes me not to forget my root.
If our region's renaissance is to be a success, it must be built upon a sustainable, resilient local food production system. Plant the future of farming. Give to our joint capital campaign today.
Well, thank you. I think that was pretty cool. Barry from Providence Farm Collective was narrating that video. She could be here tonight, but she's done a really great job writing grants and raising money, and she's really fun to work with. So Hamadi and Kristen, that was cool. It was fun to hear you talk. A lot of you have visited the farm. I visited the farm a few times last year. If you haven't, it's really, really amazing. I had a chance one time last year to have one of the lunches that they make every day, and it was incredible. I've been trying to replicate that myself at home for the last year. There's so many people, so many languages, so many backgrounds, people of all ages, kids, parents, grandparents. They're all growing these cool crops. There's giant African maize, corn. It towers over you. Beans and squash. There's chickens running around and like little chicks chasing these the chickens, and it's a real working farm. It's really fun to be at. It's really fun to watch. It's really fun to be part of. The families, like Hamadi talked about, they're here. They're connecting with their heritage, and they're teaching their children about their culture and farming, and and they're making a living too. This is a way to grow food that they eat and sell, and jobs here, youth working here all summer. They've come from all over the world. A lot of them, recently come to the U.S., recently come to Buffalo. They're creating this community, this farm together. They're making this new life for themselves, for their kids. And it's just one of the things, obviously, like other farms, this land is threatened too. A lot of farms are developed, paved, or subdivisions and strip malls and parking lots. When we lose places like this, like farmland in general, and some of the best fertile farm like this is, it's gone. You can't get it back, and we're losing more and more every day. So if it's not protected, that's what'll happen here too. If we can't buy it, then the farmers don't have this farm anymore. This is the farm that the farmers want. They're doing all the work, but I think, we can do our part. I can do my part. How can we, just make Buffalo, make Western New York a welcoming place for these people who have come here, for these farmers. I think what we need to do is we need to raise $2.3 million by the end of the year. Providence Farm Collective will be able to purchase the farm so that it's there, so they don't have to move to another farm and start fixing those soils and starting over. They have to fix the barn, so they have to build a pavilion so there are bathrooms. There's going to be a fund that the farmers themselves direct so that they can spend on what they need each year, maybe fixing a fence or improving irrigation or buying a new tractor. And then the Land Conservancy, will protect the farm so it's always a farm. And I think this is how we can all welcome, these amazing people who are just doing this incredible thing at this incredible place. And we can make this farm a permanent place for them to farm. You can make this part of their home. Kara, would you go to the next slide? And so I think the good news is we've already raised a little over $400,000 of that total that we need. So we have a ways to go, but I think we've made good progress. We need donations of all sizes. For some of the larger donation, there's donor recognition opportunities. You can be recognized on the barn or the pavilion. You can have a bench or picnic table named in your honor or someone close to you, someone's memory. And there's one that's, I think, really cool. So donors of over $10,000 can have their name placed on a quilt square that's made by Stitch Buffalo. And that'll be on display in the pavilion. So a lot of you know Stitch Buffalo. It's an organization that provides space for refugee and immigrant women to make handcrafted goods and then sell them. Kara, do you want to go to the next slide? So it's easy to donate. You can send a check to the Western New York Land Conservancy at our mailing address, P.O.Box 471, East Aurora, New York 14052. You can just go onto our website or the Providence Farm Collective website. I think in YouTube, there's a link to click if you want to go there right now, find more information about Providence Farm Collective. It's easy. And, we have until the end of this year to hit our goal so that the farmers can have this farm that's permanent, it can be protected, so that the barn and the pavilion, barn can be fixed, pavilion can be built. This is important. I think this is one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of, honestly. And, I hope you can join us. Kara, do you want to go to the last slide? So thank you for being here tonight. I think this is a really cool presentation. Thank you all for joining this work. Thank you, Kristen, Hamadi, for that cool conversation. And thank you all again, and good night.